Hey, welcome. Glad you're with us today. I'm Pastor Tim, and here with my friend today, Dr. Margaret Christmas Thomas. And most of us just know her as Margaret, so we're going to have Margaret with us today. And boy, she has quite a background when it comes to helping with mental health issues. And we're here for this mental health moment. Today, we're going to talk to Margaret, and she's has her PhD in counseling. She runs an institute of a counseling institute in California at Concordia Irvine. She's spoken to a lot of families and organizations, institutions, you name it. We're so thankful to have her today. And what we're going to talk about today is the idea we have talked in the past about fear and anxiety. We're going to really kind of mine on that word anxiety today. What is that? Why do we feel it? What are some coping mechanisms and ways to deal with it, especially in this unique time? So, Margaret, we're so thankful that you're here today. And one of the things that we start off with when we think of anxiety is that I don't think this way, and a lot of people may not start here, but this is brilliant. You said it's okay to have the permission to feel anxiety. Can you tell us a little about that?
You got it, Pastor. And it's great to be here with you guys again. And thank you so much for this opportunity to share with the family of St. John just some little things that may help them through and make this a little bit easier for all of us and our families. One of the most important things I think for people to think about as they're going through this is to give themselves permission to feel the feelings that they have. So much of us feel like we have to be strong for our kids, be strong for our spouse, but feeling our emotions rather than repressing them will help us to actually do that better. What happens when we have an emotion, it's actually an electrochemical response. And if you shove that down and you don't feel it, it's not like it goes away. It just compounds. And what happens is, and many of my friends and family have told me this, oh, I was doing great for a week and then I had this outburst. You need to take it in bite-sized chunks each day. And just one strategy for that may be you have a friend, a childhood friend, or someone that you can be unfiltered with, someone that is completely safe. Maybe, someone that you've known a really long time, and that if you mess up, it's okay if you're not perfect all the time when you talk to them. And have that unfiltered conversation and have it regularly. But even more important than that is check in with those around you daily, because it's really normal for our brain to fill in the gaps. And so what can happen is, say you're having a bad day, your spouse, your kid, your dog sees that you're unhappy, they're going to fill in the blank. They're going to attribute your behavior to something they've done. And then that resentment festers in the family. And so have those unfiltered opportunities and then take it back and check in with the loved ones around you.
Yeah, because as you mentioned a while ago, the idea of really like exploding, you don't want to let you bottle it all up, explode, have the rubber band snap, as some people would say. You really want to take those segments and work with those around you. And people do fill in the gaps because we all think differently. In fact, there's different responses, you said, that people have to anxiety. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of the things that to think about is many of us have taken things like the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Every one of us have a certain type of personality. And there are 7 billion types of personality on the planet, but you often hear about people kind of say this type of personality, this extrovert, this introvert, this thinker, this feeler. What happens in situations like what we're going through is our personality is driven to an extreme due to stress. And so each of us will come unraveled in a different way due to that stress. And so for, the introverts, it may mean that they are a little more seclusive than is healthy. For the extroverts, it may mean that they're a little bit more explosive than they should be, depending on your personality style. And so taking time to think about how you can find an outlet based on who you are and how you respond is really important. What I would suggest is literally, it's as simple as taking on a piece of paper and a pencil and writing down maybe some of the ways that you responded to stress. And then creating a column of how you would normally deal with it, because we're all high functioning people. We go to church, we work, we take care of our kids. You have ways that you have handled in the past. The difference is you don't have access to all those ways now. And so that's the final column, to look at the ways that you handled stress in the past and find something similar that you can do now. Maybe the way that you handled stress in the past was to go to the gym. That's not an option for you right now today. But you can still go for a run. You can still work out on the TV. There's so many things that you can do to replace that. So just take it one at a time, bit by bit, and make that out. And I think you'll be surprised at how effective that is in helping you to turn your previous coping mechanisms into wins for you, even now that you're going through this extreme stress.
So talking about coping mechanisms, and those are really helpful, because some coping mechanisms that we've had even from a kid, we'll be scared of something and someone's like, don't be scared, don't be fearful. Or they'll say, well, don't worry. Well, when they tell me not to worry, now I'm worrying about worrying because I was not supposed to worry and I'm worrying. It drives you crazy. But you actually had shared with us in the past that anxiety is your friend. Like, looking at it differently, so instead of saying, well, I can't be anxious, how do you look at anxiety as a friend?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a great question, Pastor. And God gave us our emotions. God created us. And granted, we were all corrupted by the fall, but anxiety is there as a friend to help you. When you think about the growth that you've had in your life, I don't think I've ever talked to a person who growth wasn't precedented by some period of tension, anxiety, or stress. Left to their own devices, people tend to stay pretty much at the same level in the same place. Mm-hmm. And when we experience anxiety and stress, it's our mind turning our attention to something that we need to be paying attention to. And right now, there is a very real threat out there. And so your brain is just trying to protect you. But the problem is sometimes your brain can be like that family member that maybe is just a little bit too intrusive. And so you have to learn how to set healthy boundaries with and have a healthy relationship with that intrusive friend that is anxiety. But try to remember, anxiety is really and truly just there to try to help. So boundaries.
So if we set those boundaries, it talks about the idea we're actually trying to manage anxiety and manage maybe the symptoms of anxiety. So what are some helpful tips on how to manage it? You had mentioned, finding that person to talk to, going for a run, doing things, but how do we really get, things are just, it's almost like the squirrels are going crazy in our head. How do we manage that? What do we do?
It depends on the person and the personality, for sure. Some people struggle with anxiety and it affects their sleep. And so you have to kind of take it apart bit by bit. Like if it's sleep, you would do the issues related to sleep, like maybe thinking about not eating later at night, or ensuring that you have time to wind down in the evening, or cutting back on the caffeine. One of the things that I like to say is a good night's sleep doesn't start when you lay your head on the pillow, but when you wake up that morning.
Oh, that's good. Can you say that again?
Sure. A good night's sleep doesn't start when you lay your head on the pillow. It's when you start your day in the morning. So.
Wow. Okay. That's good. All right. So, I had somebody who actually was speaking with me this morning, and they touched upon this. He said, I've usually my whole life been able to sleep all through the night, get up, wonderful, feeling great, not much anxiety. And these days I'm waking up 3-4 times a night, and then I get up at 4:30 or 5 and I can't sleep anymore. And the very odd part of this, they said, is that I can't even put my finger on it. I don't know if it's a specific topic. So can you speak to that? And,
absolutely,
what's going on?
Yeah, if you look at, most of you probably would know this. If you look at the speedometer of your car, usually right beside it, they have something called the RPMs. And you may even wonder, why do they even put that there? Who even looks at that? Most people probably don't. But if you've ever noticed, a car has an idling speed between 1,000 and 2,000 RPMs. And you're the same way. Right now, though, you're getting too much gas. For whatever reason, whatever things you've encountered through the day have pushed your buttons, and maybe you didn't take the time to feel those emotions. Maybe you pressed those down. And so now it's getting a little too much input, a little bit too much stimulation, and you're idling too high. And so you're going to have to find outlets so that you can bring your idling speed down. And that goes back again to taking time to maybe read a book in the evening, to rest, have a deep conversation with someone during the day, get some exercise, get some sunlight during the day.
I love the analogy, but you just bringing up RPMs reminds me that my coping mechanism for anxiety, they're gone. There's no NASCAR, there's no golf, there's no baseball. football, it's all gone right now. So these are some really helpful tips. And so as we close today, we just want to give people the practical since they don't have some of those other outlets. So you have a call to action here, and there's like 4 main things we could think of, and maybe just try one of these. So what are your 4 calls to action?
You got it, Pastor. The first one is get that sheet of paper out and write down, what is your safe place? And if you don't have one, maybe it's time to reconnect with somebody. I can't tell you the people who've come out of the woodwork during COVID. So find a safe place or identify your safe place, that place where you can be unfiltered. Next, who are you checking in with? There are people in your daily life that you need to be checking in with. May not need to be unfiltered, but they kind of need to know where you're at each day. You know, and maybe you're a person of few words. If they've been living with you for 20 years, I'm sure that's sufficient, but do take the time to check in with them. And then the next thing is those columns I talked about. What are your anxiety responses? What are your previous coping mechanisms that worked? And then what can you now do to address those stress areas?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You're a wealth of knowledge. And I know that my anxiety level has just dropped a little bit just hearing some of this, because I look forward to practicing this and trying to figure it out. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners do as well. But I also think it probably brought up some questions that or issues that our listeners have. And so we want you to know that we're here for you. We're part of St. John Lutheran Church in Mansfield, Texas. And if you have some questions that you might want us to cover on future talks, or if you have something private you want to share, please feel free to email me. You can do tim@stjohnmansfield.org. That's STJOHN Mansfield.org. If it's something you'd like to just have us talk about that's maybe not too private, you can even put it on the feed below and let people kind of respond and talk about it as well. So again, thank you, Margaret, for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you all next time. God bless.
God bless. My pleasure.